Hello everyone, Yuval Teren is here, and today we are here with Juda Alcabes. He's a therapist who helps people through the power of improv. And I know you're all wondering what is improv and how therapy goes along with it. So Juda, maybe you can give us a little explanation about it and some background about you.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me. I love talking about this topic to anybody who will listen. So here I am talking about it. So improv is essentially, it's the art of making stuff up on the spot. And it's actually a pretty old form of art and entertainment. But in America, it really has only really been done for about 100 years. So if you think about like what a stereotypical play might have been, 200 years ago, you would imagine, right, a lot of stage production, costumes, and that was, kind of like going out to watch a play, going out to watch a show kind of thing, right? And so the idea of really just being on a stage with two chairs and maybe, one other person or sometimes many other people, but no costume, no set, no script, everything is made up on the spot. That idea was wild, to the point where when people started doing it professionally, they were heavily mocked. People were like, what is this? This is a ridiculous art form. The fascinating thing that most people don't know, even if they're familiar with what improv is that one of the main people who started it in America was actually a social worker. And she used to use improv games where you would tell a story and make it up on the spot with immigrant children who came through Ellis Island and they had no family and they didn't speak the language. And a lot of times there was a lot of feuding between the Italian kids and the French kids, or, whatever groups were there. And so Viola Spolin, who was a social worker, used to use improv games to help people connect with each other. And that's kind of what I do.
I love it. So you help people connect with each other through that. So,
Yeah.
I'm curious. First of all, I'm very excited for you to be here on the show with us because
Thanks.
it's a very unique kind of therapy. It's through acting. And I feel it's something that people can connect with very easily through, as we kind of play role different characters and we get different ideas and we get different perspectives. So how would therapy like that would look like? For example, someone that I know you work with people that experiencing an anxiety also. You shared with me before. So maybe you can share with me how would it look like a therapy, improv therapy?
Yeah. So the idea of getting on a stage without a plan in front of people is terrifying. For most people, it should have some level of terrifyingness to it. Now, if you have high anxiety or an anxiety disorder, so then the thought is beyond terrifying. It's the worst thing you could possibly imagine. And so when I talk to people who have anxiety about improv, they will initially get very anxious about it. But then I start to explain to them some of the concepts and some of the ideas of how really what you're doing is you're not trying to come up with a brand new idea on the spot. Really what you're trying to do is you're trying to accept whatever comes to you and work with that. And once you really start to experience that, so then your anxiety can go down, because the anxiety about, oh my God, I have to perform, I have to come up with something amazing, but that's not what we're doing here. What we're doing here is listening, connecting to the environment, connecting to the other people that are there, and then just taking whatever's there and being like, this could be a this. So, you could be my cousin. And then the other person who's my cousin says, and I'm also your boss, right? And now we have a story that we're building about this strange dynamic where my boss is my first cousin, right? So all that is, it really exists within the moment, and anxiety pulls us out of the moment and tries to make us think of something which is going to make everybody love us, or everybody think that we're so funny or that we're so talented, or whatever it wants us to focus on. but we don't listen to that, and we go back into the moment. And when we go back into the moment, we actually end up being successful. And having that experience is something that people will reference later in other anxious situations, where they might be like, I got to really do well at this staff meeting today and press everybody in the office. And then they might start thinking about it as, well, if this was an improv scene, I would really listen, and then I would take what's given to me, and I would say, how can I use this for the service of the greater scene that we're working on?
Interesting. It's really to try to figure out, it's how life works. That's why I love improv.
Yes.
Life surprise you, and you need to figure it out along the way.
Yes, absolutely. Life is always surprising us. It's a surprise to me that we don't realize how much we improvise, because nobody ever knows what is going to happen next, and no one ever knows what's going to happen in a conversation, right? So you meet somebody, you can predict, like, hey, we always talk about this, and he kind of always says this kind of stuff, but you don't know what's going to come out of his mouth. But then somehow we manage that. We manage all these other situations. So essentially what we're doing in those moments is we're saying, okay, the moment brings us something. How can I work with it?
Wow. Is there any tip? Maybe if we're going to do improv right now, how would it look like? Maybe we can do a short example of how improv would look like, and maybe how can our listeners apply it in their life, in their everyday life, to get some idea. And after they come and join you.
All right. Well, let's do like this. All right. I'm going to. Do you have a pen and paper? Can you write something down?
I do.
Or type something?
Yeah, I do. Here it is. I got the pen and the paper.
I'm gonna give you 3 words, and you're going to make this a very small story out of it. Okay. So the story is going to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So it could be as simple as 3 sentences. Somebody did blank, and then blank happened, the end. But you're going to use all 3 of my words. Okay, you ready? And I haven't thought about this before. I'm going to look at my bookshelf, and whichever words I read off the bookshelf, I'm going to tell you.
So I write the words down.
Yeah.
And then I build a story.
Yeah.
Based on I make up the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Here are your 3 words. It's hard to see from here. I want to look at this bookshelf. Sorry. Okay. Married.
Okay.
Preacher. And trap.
All right. So I wrote 3 words: married, creature, and trap. So now I improvise and I create a story out of those 3 words.
Mm-hmm.
So many years ago in Secret Island, there was 2 special creatures that decided to get married on the island. What they didn't know is that this island was a trap.
That's awesome.
Changing the life.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. So, first of all, we always clap at the end of everything in improv. And I find myself clapping at random times where other people weren't expecting clapping, but we always clap. And one of the reasons why we always clap is because we always want to be supportive of other people who are taking the risk. Right? Anytime you agree to do improv, you agree to just be like, I don't know if it's going to go well. And you could be doing improv forever and be very comfortable with it, but you still don't know if it's going to go well, right? So it's always a risk. The risk is minimal at the end of the day, really. Like, what happens if it doesn't go well? That's a separate conversation, but we always want to support you as you do it. So I clap for you when you finish your story. Your story was interesting to me. I enjoyed it. Right, you added in that there was a secret island, and the whole secret island was a trap. Which really, I was kind of like, oh, like where is this gonna go? Right. You also made it that it was 2 creatures that married each other. Right. And so with those 3 words, you made up a story. Now, it's not that you couldn't make up a story without those 3 words, but I'll say 2 things. One is that a lot of times when you get instructions like, oh, just make up a story, people get very nervous and they think, I don't know what can it be? What can I don't know. What should it be about? Right. Um, and I can't tell you how many times I've told people in group, draw a picture without any instruction of what the picture should be. And they get so anxious and they start saying, I don't know what I should draw. And I say anything. And then eventually people start drawing something. And then always somebody says, I drew it, but it's not good. And I always say to them, did you hear me say to you that you need to draw a good picture? Right? So we get overwhelmed with like our own expectations. But then when we learn to work with the things that are already there, sometimes it gives us permission to just like, all right, whatever, I could just create something. Right? So that's number one. Number two is that this is something that people don't realize when it comes to the creative process in general, not just with improvising, is that there are microscopic steps that are taken. And let's say you started this by looking at my bookshelf. You took 3 words, you wrote a little bit of an idea, and then you took that idea and you added to it. And then you took that idea. And then 10 years later, I see you and I'm like, what's up? And you're like, I'm the international bestseller because of the book that I wrote, Creatures of the Trapped Island, right? So I mean, it's got to start somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, it's powerful. It's not only acting, it's the power of storytelling. And it reminds me, there is the father of hypnosis, hypnotherapy, Milton Erickson. So what he did uniquely is he used the power of metaphors and stories to change people's perspectives and in inner philosophy and ideas just by sharing with them stories. And it tells us that when we share with people stories, we not only enjoy listening, but we actually have the power to shift people's perspectives and ideas, which allows us to deliver messages clearly and help people also go through hard times in life. Sometimes we watch a movie and it gives us some ideas to our life and we just feel good, or watch a theater show, read a book. So stories change our life all the time. So I encourage also our listeners to actually practice it. For me, it was very fun to practice. My mind needed to think and create, and it's a very good practice also for our listeners to do with themselves and start practice improv. And here you got a great start here from Juda.
Yeah, it really is a great way of looking at it, because I part of my personal journey with all of this is that I've been playing music for many, many years. And, if I consider like singing in choirs, which I was like really serious about when I was younger, I've been playing music, performing music since I was 8 years old. And I would say that 80% of it was, I don't want to call it torture because it was a huge part of my life, but let's just say the last 20% has been so free and so blissful comparatively, because for so many years I was trying to analyze my music to figure out, here are the mistakes I made and how do I eliminate those mistakes for the future. And I was so tight. And part of that is this like almost powerlessness around creativity, where it's like I don't have any inherent ability. I have to force it all of the time. And then, with studying and practicing improv, I've developed a different way of looking at creativity, where it's not this thing which I have to force. It's actually something that already exists. It's literally everywhere. Everything is a story. Everything is a song. And I just have to intentionally engage with it. And then, because our God-given ability to create will come back through, when we decide that we're going to be intentional about it. Right. So, I will do exercises like this if I'm starting to, write a song or write a sketch or something like that. I will sometimes start with, all right, let me just take 5 words from my shelf and go from there. Or any other thing. I might take an object and be like, what is this can of soda say? Right. And like, I would think about it, like, what's his world like? What's his motivation? Like, is he happy when he gets cracked open, or is that like kind of the end of his life? Right. And like, all of this could be useless in, let's say, the project that I'm working on, but it's the engaging with the creative self and the environment around you and working with what already exists, as a way of connecting your creative self to the moment that you're in, which is improv.
Wow. So, as I think about it, it's also about changing our state of mind and being able to connect every time to a different state of mind. Sometimes it could be to be angry, sometimes happy, sometimes to also work with our emotions and express them in different ways. But more than expressing it, correct me if I'm wrong, it's also expressing ourselves in different ways, our emotions and behaviors. And by doing it, I feel like we are more practiced in changing our states when sometimes life strikes us and we feel sad or depressed. We are more practiced to go out of this state and become happy and become more energized. When we feel lack of energy, we can find our way out easier because we're already practiced.
100%. When I'm around other improvisers, when improvisers get together, it's a wacky thing to observe from the outside because, we don't really feel embarrassed about being playful, and we can start a bit without even realizing it, and we're so committed to it being real. Myself and a bunch of my friends who were in my improv class, not the one I teach, the one that I take, we were talking about someone's birthday, and we were standing in the parking lot, and we were making a joke that we're going to have an improv birthday, which is basically you get to pick the scene, and then we actually do the scene, but it's not actually happening there, and we would like do it in public, and people would be like, what the heck is wrong with you people? And we actually started doing it, and we were like scooping out ice cream and like singing happy birthday, and it was in a parking lot. And we didn't realize that we were doing it and that it was weird, so to speak. But that's what happens to you in a good way when you are constantly changing your emotional state. You actually become so flexible that you can move in and out of emotional states, where the reverse is true, where you would be like, let's say I'm having a terrible day, or it's a situation where I feel terrible. Do I have access to a character that is a different emotional state? And because I'm practicing improv, it is very real to me. It's not a game that I'm playing. I feel the reality. I'm living in it. I can get into that character to get through this experience, or to bring myself into a different mindset, which is sometimes is the most challenging thing to do in life.
Wow, I love it. It's such a strong, it's a simple idea, but with a very strong. It has a lot of strength in it, and a lot of powerful help into people's life, in everyone's life. And also being playful, it's sometimes
Yes.
people forget it. As kids, we remember, but as we grow up, we start to feel shy and stressed, and we try to think more what other people will think about us. So playfulness is such a great skill to have, and also enjoying. We only live once, so why not
Right.
live the moment?
Yes, for sure. And playfulness being so important. People hear playfulness as adults, and they think like, oh, well, that's good if you're playing with your kid, or that's good in certain situations if you're a teacher or something like that. But if you really think about it, society basically makes socially acceptable playfulness, and then we need to release tension, so we go do those things, as opposed to something which would maybe be more fun, but we're embarrassed to do it, right? So like one of the less unhealthy ones, let's say, would be playing golf, right? It's socially acceptable to be like, yeah, I'm going to go play around the golf, right? Let's say I was like, me and my friends have a competition where we make paper airplanes and we see who can get it across a field in less throws. Like, some people would be like, that's what you're going to do on your Sunday? Well, why is it any different, right? It's not different at all. So that's a healthy one, but also within the rules of society of what's acceptable play and what's not. I would say one of the more unhealthy ones is drinking alcohol. People are not allowed to be silly, and they're not allowed to be playful. But if they have a drink in their hand, they're allowed to be like, I'm loose, right? Like, why do we need that? If you're so serious and you're never playful, why do we need times where we have a permission to be playful and a liquid which allows us to hold it and say, it's okay that I'm being playful right now because I'm holding this drink?
I love it. It's a great also reminder for our listeners to pay attention. I feel like the idea of it is we need sometimes to get into certain environment or scenario that to feel certain things. If we want to be playful, we need to put ourselves into a playful environment. We need to be in an environment that allows us to express this part.
Yes.
That exists already in us. All of those stuff that people show in the improv class, it's things that comes from them. So it's some people might think, wait, so how is faking it or acting would help me? But you're not faking it. It comes really from you. It's just different
100%.
parts. So
100%. It's not faking it because it's you, right? So I've done this on the tennis court. Tennis is my other thing that I love. And there was a certain, I don't know if people are familiar, but John Isner's, he just retired last year, but he was like 6'5", and his real strength was his serve. He could serve at crazy angles because he was so tall, and he really was one of the best servers of all time. And I was struggling with my serve a couple years ago, and I decided that I was going to play John Isner, meaning that I was going to act while I was playing as John Isner. Like, it's a role, and I'm an actor. And I got hired to play John Isner for some reason, even though he's a full foot taller than me. Fine. I started serving amazing. So I would walk to the line and I'd be like, well, I'm John Isner. Of course I know how to serve. I know I'm not John Isner. Nobody has to be worried. I know I'm not him, right? But like you're saying, that I'm playing someone else, but I'm not faking it because it's actually me. It's just I gave myself permission to have confidence and believe that I could do it through this idea of a character.
I love it. In neurolinguistic programming, so I'm a neurolinguistic programming trainer. So part of the systems that are able to work people is actually connect to imagine that you connect to a resource of a person you know that you think, for example, you have a problem and you think about a person that would help you solve this problem, that he would know what to do. And imagine what would they do and how would they act and how would they behave and apply it to your life. But as you imagine it, it comes from you. You just access the part in your mind that have the solution for that. It just triggers the solution out of you. So I love it. It's as you play, it's you, but you use the player that you imagined you being him. You just use it to access being a better player.
Right.
That is already in you.
Yeah. And it's the same thing when we're doing improv is that, the idea, let's say, comes from the outside, because when we're doing improv, we ask the audience, or if it's a class, we'll ask the other students who are not in the scene for the suggestion to start the scene, right? So how do these two people know each other? And someone will be like, oh, they're brother and sister, right? What's something that they need to accomplish today? They need to figure out how to get away from the cops because they stole a lot of money, right? So that's not your idea, but then the way that you use it, that's yours, right? So it's like unoriginal. Somebody could think of it like it's unoriginal in a way, but it's not unoriginal, because when you take that idea and then you run it through your system, even though it started there, right? It got created here. Yeah. Right. So it's the same thing with the story that you wrote. I could do that exercise with 250 people and I get 250 different stories with the same words.
That's beautiful. So I want to summarize our episode today. Maybe you can give us a quote or something that someone shared with you that inspired you to become a better version of yourselves and help people, or inspired you to just do better, improve, develop yourself.
Yeah. I'll tell you that, you had my improv teacher on, Angelica Zadak, right? And, I've had hours and hours of discussion with her about improv and the depth of it and theory and things like that. But I don't know if it's one necessarily thing that she said to me, but I know that she pushed me, ironically, to behave in improv. And what that means is that I've always done voices and characters, and I've always been, comfortable performing and doing kind of comedy and things like that. When I came into improv, she was like, you have a lot of talent. I am going to box you in a little bit, and I'm going to teach you how to be grounded, right? So you do a wacky character that could be really fun, but sometimes you really need to set the story in a grounded way. Like, it was a regular day, we were doing regular things, and then an alien jumped out of one of the closets, right? So she would yell at me. She would go, "Judah, stay grounded. Judah, stay grounded." And it taught me such a valuable lesson in expanding yourself, even in an area where you're already good at something. As that, like, we could do this thing where we're like, oh, I've been doing this for a million years, so like I'm good. Like I don't need any help or instruction, or even not in an egotistical way. You could just be like, yeah, whatever. I'm great at this. I don't really want to think about it that much. But then that area might actually be the one where, if you look to expand that, then you're really, really going to find something special because you're already good at it, right? And so I remember her like yelling at me, "Stay grounded, stay grounded." And a part of me would be like, "Oh, like, why are you telling me to stay grounded? I want to be free." And after like 6 months of her telling me to stay grounded, I was talking to her after class, and I said, "Angelica, you got to unground me." And she said something like, "Unground yourself." And I was like, oh my God, she's so right. She's so right. Like, she's giving me advice, but not because she's saying you can't do this without me telling you what to do. She's saying, I'm telling you, focus on this area, but you're pretty good. So decide when you want to be grounded and when you don't want to be grounded. And I've taken that idea to other areas of my life too, where it's like, yeah, expand yourself in the space that you're already good at, and then decide which one of your million tools you want to use.
I love it. Such a strong idea, philosophy to remember, also for our listeners to take with them. So,
Yeah,
Judah, I want to thank you for being with us on the show. It was a fascinating episode. So many great ideas. Maybe you can share with us how our listeners can find you.
Yeah, sure. The Improv Therapist on Instagram, theimprovtherapist.com. If you're ever in Boca and you want to just try out improv, we have a drop-in class on Monday nights at 7:30 here. So you can just come once and never come again. I probably say you'll probably come back, but come try it out if you just want to see what that's like. And the Improv Therapist on YouTube and the Improv Therapist podcast.
Love it. Thank you, Judah.
Thanks for having me.